welcome to this reception. I am Olivier Mater. I'm working in the Policy and Consultation Unit at the European Data Protection Supervisor, and I will be at the office of the EDPS in Strasbourg. There will be a few speeches to start the reception, so it's my pleasure to welcome Wojciech Wiewiórowski, the European Data Protection Supervisor, and to welcome also Mr. Juan Fernando Lopez Aguilar, the Chair of the Civil Liberties Committee of the European Parliament, to welcome Ms. Emily O'Reilly, European Ombudsman, and to welcome Bjørn Berge, Deputy Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I become a little bit emotional having the office here in Strasbourg. So today will be the day for Olivier, who will be our representative here. But I would like to welcome all of you, all our friends, all the people who are cooperating with us and who will be cooperating with our office. But let me give the floor first to our real host, the representative of the Parliament, Juan Fernando Lopez Aguilar.
Good afternoon, dear friends. Good afternoon, dear Wojciech Wiewiórowski, Mary O'Reilly, Mr. Berge from the Council of Europe. It's my pleasure to be here before you, just saluting this new idea of the European Data Protection Supervisor to come up with a place in Strasbourg. You know that Strasbourg is meaningful for us members of the European Parliament for good reason. We are compelled by the treaties to at least 12 plenaries a year. And we actually do. And so this is our house. Yes, you are right, but this is your house too. And I can only say on behalf of the LIBE committee that we do care about data protection and the European Data Protection Supervisor. I used to say that the LIBE committee is the heaviest workload in the house with a wide array of competences, from fundamental rights to internal security, going through external borders, migration and asylum, free movement, police cooperation, judicial cooperation, criminal law, judicial guarantees, but yes, fundamental rights and data protection, privacy, confidentiality of data, that is a fundamental right. It's not the only one in the Charter we care of course, but we do care about data protection. We actually delivered in the first mandate I had as chair of the LIBE committee, 2009-2014, with the data protection package, the GDPR, the regulation, and the law enforcement directive. And we pay much attention every time Wojciech Wiewiórowski is in the room or in the podium and makes his case for data protection, along with the European Data Protection Board, which is also a relevant body chaired by Dr. Andrea Jelinek. So we are only happy that we are going to be able to relate more often and physically close to this new dispensation of the European Data Protection Supervisor here in Strasbourg, with the expectation, of course, to keep a close eye on every development. I'm sure you know that we are now dealing with some files which ask altogether for relevant insights from the European Data Protection Authority Supervisor, namely artificial intelligence, health data space, child abuse online, child sexual abuse, and the new EU-US data framework. So problematic. We are still discussing it in the expectation that whatever comes will survive the European Court of Justice. So I can only say that I'm only happy to be gathering with you, honored to be along with distinguished members of the LIBE committee before my eyes, of course with Wojciech, with the European Ombudsperson Mary O'Reilly and Mr. Berge representing the Council of Europe. I'm only sorry that it's much too early to enjoy the wine, because there are still so many points in the order of the day that, regrettably so, we won't enjoy it that much. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much.
We always say that the institution that we are cooperating the most is the Parliament, but the institution that we are the closest to is Ombudsperson. Emily, can I ask you to take the floor?
Wojciech, Olivier, I can hardly say welcome to Strasbourg since you've lived here before and were born here. So thank you for the invitation to be here. Wojciech and I, my office and your office shared the same space in Brussels for many years, and then you grew far too big and kicked us out. We have a lovely office in Brussels. We have a beautiful office here. So please, I'm concerned that you might also grow too big here and push us around. But we'll keep an eye on that. Wojciech and I had a conversation recently about matters that concern both of our offices and the work that we do. You do data protection. A large part of our work is about transparency, and of course they are theoretically around the same thing, which is the appropriate release of documents. But sometimes they seem to clash, and this was some of the issues that I was talking about. Sometimes when we are doing our work in relation to access to documents requests, we find data protection used again and again to prevent what we frequently consider are legitimate documents to be used and to be given to citizens. And it's certainly not the fault of the EDPS and or anything like that, but I think there has to be a harmony arrived at, because I think the citizens don't really care. What the citizens want is that there be accountability in relation to what the EU administration and the EU institutions do. And it's important that they get that. And transparency is one of the ways in which that is achieved, and it is extremely important. I think, again, when I was speaking to Wojciech and when I talked to my colleagues about this, everything has a moment, when it becomes the big thing. I hesitate to use fashion or fashionable when you're talking about these important issues, but transparency, access to documents, freedom of information was a very strong political impulse in the late 1990s and the early part of the 21st century, and then data protection came in. I think, and it has become quite a dominant political value, and I think that's partly arising from the influence that big tech has and the internet on all of our lives, and how do we deal with that? I actually think the way that we deal with that, and especially the way in which the internet, social media has proven to be in many cases so damaging for democracy, I don't think that is going to be dealt with just by the Ombudsman, by the data protection supervisor, by those particular regulations. I think it's going to take a huge political imagination and huge political courage to deal with some of the very negative fallouts from all of that. But we do our best. And again, when Wojciech and I were speaking, I was giving him horror stories about data protection. He was giving me horror stories about transparency. So it will be good. I think as well, I think you said that you missed some of the corridor chats, because when my colleagues who deal with access to documents and your colleagues who also deal with access to documents, in effect, through data protection, would meet informally in Montoya, it really was an opportunity to exchange. So I'm hoping this presence here will also do that, encourage that, because we're both in the same line of business and we're both working for the greatest amount of accountability and the protection of our citizens. So I wish you well, and I thank you.
One of the main reasons to have the office here was also the cooperation with Council of Europe, our older sister, that started to deal with data protection much before any other organization in the world. Can I ask you to take the floor in the name of the Council of Europe?
Thank you very much, and it's very good to be here and to see you all here. And I really hope that we can have at least a sip of wine after the speeches and the formal introduction. So, European Data Protection Supervisor, President of the LIBE Committee of the European Parliament, European Ombudsperson, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here for the opening of your new office. I have no doubt that it will be a place from which the protection of the European citizens' data will be further enhanced and strengthened. A common goal, as a matter of fact, fully shared by the European Union and the Council of Europe, and on which, as near neighbors, we will certainly continue to work together. We look forward to this cooperation on how we can build a free data transfer area on this continent, while also preserving the rights and dignity of those who live within it. This is about ensuring respect for individuals' privacy, not as a courtesy, but as a fundamental right. Exactly that aim underpins the instruments that the Council of Europe has elaborated over the years, so as to ensure that new technologies benefit society, but without undermining people's rights and the rule of law. Take our Convention 108, the only global legally binding treaty on the protection of privacy and personal data, which now has 55 parties and 40 more observers, not just from this continent, but from all over the world. Its updated version, Convention 108 Plus, goes further, still supporting global data transfers while also protecting individuals from algorithms, control, or surveillance, for that matter. And let me not forget to also mention here today the second additional protocol to the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime that helps us ensure enhanced cooperation and disclosure of electronic evidence. This is vital to cross-border investigations. The additional protocol also brings strong safeguards that protect human rights and personal data specifically. It is no coincidence that this is the most detailed provision in the protocol. And it's designed so that personal data crossing borders in any criminal investigation meets the specific requirements of Convention 108+, and importantly, the requirements of EU law. This interaction between the EU and the Council of Europe standards and expertise, which we see in so many areas and which we highly appreciate, is also evident from the important input from the European Data Protection Supervisor during the drafting of Convention 108+. And also from your regular and valuable work in the Consultative Committee on the Automatic Processing of Personal Data, the TPD. Dear friends, looking forward, the Council of Europe is now preparing a new convention on the development, design, and application of artificial intelligence. It will be another important step forward that will ensure that new technological developments also upholds people's rights and certainly do not undermine them. Dear Wojciech, it is always important to have a good relationship with one's neighbors. So in the Council of Europe, we count ourselves very lucky to have you and your office as our very good neighbors and partners. We look forward to the years of contact and close cooperation that lie ahead. Thank you very much for your attention.